What would you need to do to get an MGA up and running and successfully operating for the long term, particularly against a backdrop of a softening market? Well, to discuss that, I'm joined here in the studio by David Plummer, CEO at Bluefriars Group. David, first of all, tell us a little bit about Bluefriars.
Well, Bluefriars is an incubator. We help MGAs and MGUs set up and get active in the UK and European markets. We're in our 14th year of trading now. And during that time, we helped maybe 60 firms bring new propositions from scratch to the UK and European markets.
Is now a good time to be setting up an MGA? There certainly seem to be quite a lot around at the moment.
Well, depending on whose figures you believe, one large firm in the space says there's about £9 billion pounds placed into the MGA space across the UK and Europe. Yes, it remains good time. Yes, the market is softer, but if you have the right specialism and you have the right approach, there's still money to be made. I think the important thing to remember here is that insurers and other people who will eventually buy your MGA pay for distribution. And the EBITDA multiples on distribution remain very high when compared to other financial services firms. So if you think you've got a good idea, now is the time to be looking at executing that.
And is there sufficient capital around to back all of these new MGA ventures?
Yes, there is novel capital coming into the market, and we've seen that being used in two ways. One, to back new insurance offers, including new risk-taking fronts who will provide capacity to the market, and also people are backing new MGAs. So yes, there's money out there. We can help you get in touch with it. Give us a call.
That all sounds very positive, but what are the risks in the current market?
Well, I think when we look at our experience over the past decade or so, there are a number of factors that are a problem here. We've looked after maybe 60 managing general agents, brokers and MGUs. And where they tend to fall foul is they think that the good idea is enough. It's not just about that. You have to make a successful underwriting profit. And if you look at our MGAs, outside of the ones in certain specialist areas like motor, they're running at exceptionally good loss ratios. Sub 40% is quite common. You have to have the right long-term arrangement with underwriters in order to make sure that you can continue to make an underwriting profit, and you have to have the right people. And after that, it gets a little bit more complex, because what is likely to happen is you're faced with success. Success is actually quite difficult. You can grow too quickly. You can have the temptation to expand beyond your means. You can take on what you think are the right people at the time, but actually there are some good people in our marketplace. Don't get me wrong, there's some absolutely fabulous underwriters and brokers in our marketplace, but there is also quite a lot of, how shall I say, well, I've done quite well, therefore I deserve this going on. Now, the MGA market is lean. The people operating in are very results driven. And if you want to be in this space, then you've got to accept that there is a certain amount of hard work involved.
So would you say it's easier to set up than it is to scale yourself up, given you're talking about bringing people on board? And presumably there's things like technology systems and all sorts that become more of an issue as you get big?
Well, yes. I mean, obviously, the reason Bluefriars is in the marketplace is to help people set up. We characterize ourselves as an incubator. So yes, there's ourselves and there's some of our competition out there who will say, well, come and join us and we'll get your MGA up and running. And yes, we're very good at that. We have a highly successful track record. Not a single MGA under our management has ever failed. But getting from, okay, I've got something up and running, I have an underwriter, they've got a good rating, we're doing business, getting from that stage to where you're scaling and where ultimately you'll become quite interesting to firms who may wish to buy you out, may wish to invest, that gets harder. And also it's picking the right markets. You may have one initial very good idea, but once you've got that initial good idea, where do you go next? Do you expand into other classes, or do you create more specialisms within your current class? Also, do you go, well, I've got an original and new product, and we've launched a few of those over the years. Do I need another original and new product? And of course, then ultimately it's all about your backing finance.
Just thinking about some of the things that are going on in the background of the economy at the moment. I mean, there's lots of talks about things like AI. Is that a threat to MGA business models?
I don't think we should be too paranoid about AI, but we should be very, very cautious. We've had this debate. In fact, I'm thinking of releasing a series of articles on this soon. If you, as an SME business, as a small medium enterprise, were to turn around to a business with scale, huge finance, and the ability to replicate everything that you do, turn around to them and go, oh, and by the way, over the period of a year to 18 months, I'm going to literally demonstrate my entire business model to you. Do you think that would be a good idea? Not really. So there's the appropriate use of AI. There's also the regulatory guardrails around AI. If you give something to an open large language model, you're in a situation where you don't know where that data is going to be stored. Looking at FCA, PRA rules on that, they're quite clear. You need to know that it's in the UK, or you need to know that it's in Europe, or you need to be able to risk manage that situation. Now, where you turn that data over to another firm and say you are now in charge of the management of that, you're clearly going to be bumping up against those rules. Now, there are ways around it, and we have some experience in this area, but if you're going to use technology, which is an obvious means of keeping costs low at the beginning, you need to be careful how you do that.
I suppose the other thing that we hear a lot about at the moment is cybercrime. So how vulnerable to fraud and cybercrime are MGAs these days?
Well, I think anybody who works in our market will have woken up to the fact that the kind of, for example, phishing emails that, or vishing would be a voicemail, obviously, vishing and phishing attacks we get have become more sophisticated. They look correct. 5 years ago, they would be quite obviously, a poor attempt at faking communication from a market firm. I think also, whilst I don't want to cause too much panic, it's quite clear that the criminal fraternity have woken up to the fact that the MGA is a thing in the marketplace, and that unlike their much larger suppliers, they are probably operating on tighter margins, and therefore attacking their IT infrastructure might be slightly easier. Now, we have some experience of this again. We've worked with a number of firms, both as consultants and within our own pool of MGAs to help them with situations that have arisen. And there are things you can do to make yourself more secure. And what is more, because of the risk of systemic shock in the marketplace at present, we've been doing quite a lot in that area to improve security in general and give more options to people who choose Bluefriars to look after their MGA.
Well, you mentioned operating as an incubator. There's a number of MGA incubators out there at the moment. So what would you say are your USPs?
We can do both the UK and Europe, which is important for scaling. Because we're at Lloyd's in Brussels, we can also do most of the world. We are very much a pull rather than a push organization. Many of our competitors, and their business models are fine. There's many strokes for many folks, and that's absolutely fine with us. They'll tend to push a package at you. Use our software, use this regulatory platform, do this, do that. The truth of the matter is if you're a true innovator, you may have created your own InsureTech, for example. Therefore, we are far more agnostic about systems. And we also, the first question we would ask you is, what do you need? And we would put together a structure around you that looks at what you need rather than what we have to sell you. I think that's quite important. We've always focused on having C-suite contact. We tend to find that some of our large competition, the kind of people you're dealing with are not in the executive. They're not the decision makers of the business. And when you're small, you need someone to hold your hand and say, look, we've been through all of this. We were a startup 14 years ago, and this is what it's like.
And finally, if someone's watching this and they think, I've got a good idea for an MGA, I need to talk to Bluefriars, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, clearly you can contact us on LinkedIn. You can contact us on our website. We'll be at BIBA. Come May, we've taken some private rooms in a hotel 2 minutes walk away from the main conference centre. You can just contact us either via the MGAA or via our own website and say, I'd like to have some time in those rooms. And you can come and have a talk to us about your big idea in strictest confidence. We will sign an NDA on the day. Clearly, we would not be able to trade if you couldn't trust us with your big idea. If you would like to talk to us more generally, well, we're all pretty easily contactable, via our website. And John, the MD of our broker, and I are always talking to new people. We'd love to hear from you.
David Plummer, thank you.
Thank you.